fire in the middle of a quiet town. People stood frozen as this massive beast charged forward. But when they saw why, an eerie silence took over. Their faces turned pale. Their hearts pounded. Skull, because what this bear did next will make you question everything you thought you knew about wild animals. It was just another quiet afternoon in a small, peaceful town nestled near the wilderness. Children played outside, shopkeepers chatted with customers, and life moved at its usual unhurried pace. The townspeople were used to nature. They had seen deer wandering near their homes, heard the distant howls of wolves at night, and even spotted the occasional bear foraging in the forests. But today was different. A massive 1,000-pound bear had emerged from the woods, and something about it wasn't right. At first, it just stood there, sniffing the air, shifting its weight from one paw to another, its dark eyes scanning the area. Normally, bears kept to themselves, avoiding humans unless provoked. But this one seemed troubled, restless, as if it sensed something the townspeople couldn't. A few onlookers noticed and whispered among themselves. Why is it just standing there? Is it hungry? Maybe we should call someone. Then the bear began to pace, back and forth, its massive claws scraping against the dirt road. Its ears twitched, nostrils flaring as if searching for something unseen. A low, guttural growl rumbled from its chest, not aggressive but uneasy. People stopped what they were doing. The air grew tense. Some took a cautious step back. Others reached for their phones, ready to capture what was happening, or call for help if needed. Then, it happened. A thunderous roar. A sound so powerful it rattled the windows of nearby buildings. A sound so primal, so full of urgency, that it sent shivers down every spine. People gasped. Some clutched their chests. Children screamed. Birds shot into the sky, startled by the earth-shaking force of the bear's voice. Panic spread like wildfire. Some bolted inside their homes, slamming doors shut. Others backed away cautiously, keeping their eyes locked on the beast, expecting the worst. Was it about to charge? Had something provoked it? Was this the moment a wild animal would turn violent? But then, something strange happened. The bear didn't attack. It didn't lunge at the people or go after food. It wasn't looking at them at all. Instead, its gaze was locked onto something else. Something far more important. Something that had nothing to do with hunger and everything to do with survival. The bear tensed its muscles. Its breathing grew heavy. And before anyone could process what was happening, it bolted forward. Not toward the people, but toward something hidden from their view. And when they finally saw what had caught the beast's attention, their blood ran cold. The shocking moment, the bear's true mission revealed. The massive bear lunged forward with terrifying speed. Its sheer weight thundered against the ground, kicking up dust as it charged toward something hidden from view. Screams erupted. Some people ran for cover. Others stood frozen, their instincts at war. Should they flee or stay to witness whatever was about to unfold? The bear was not chasing prey. It wasn't attacking. It was running toward something. Then, as the dust settled, the townspeople finally saw what had caught the bear's attention. And their blood ran cold. Beneath a collapsed pile of wooden beams and rubble, something was struggling, trapped. A soft, pitiful sound echoed through the air, barely audible over the bear's heavy breathing. It was a cub. A tiny bear cub, barely old enough to survive on its own, pinned beneath fallen debris. For a second everything made sense. The mother's restlessness, her pacing, her roars of distress. She hadn't been warning the humans. She had been crying out for help. But now she wasn't waiting anymore. With a deep, guttural growl, the massive mother bear began her desperate rescue. Her claws ripped through the debris, splintering wood and sending rocks flying. She tore at the wreckage with the force of a creature who knew failure was not an option. The people watched in stunned silence. Some had expected the worst, an attack, a tragedy. Instead, they were witnessing something primal, raw, and deeply powerful. The mother bear didn't stop. Not for pain. Not for exhaustion. Not for the fear of being surrounded by humans. Her powerful muscles strained as she pulled, lifted, and dug. Dust covered her fur, but she didn't care. She was focused on one thing, saving her cub. Beam shifted slightly. A faint whimper sounded from beneath. The mother bear froze. Then, with one final mighty effort, she heaved the last obstruction aside, and the cub tumbled free. For a long moment the crowd was silent. The tiny cub, dazed but alive, let out a weak cry. And then, it moved. It stumbled toward its mother, pressing its small, fragile body against her massive frame. The mother bear let out a deep, relieved huff, licking the cub's fur gently, as if to reassure herself that it was truly safe. And then she turned to face the people. The humans, the ones who had once been terrified, now stood in awe. No one moved. No one spoke. Because in that moment, they weren't looking at a monster. They were looking at a mother. A creature not so different from themselves. A being who knew love, loss, and the desperate need to protect the ones who mattered most. Then, without another sound, the mother bear scooped up her cub and walked away, leaving behind a town that would never forget the day they saw the true power of a mother's love. The life-or-death struggle, cranking up the tension. The air was thick with tension. The massive bear, already battered and covered in dust, did not hesitate. It dug its claws into the wreckage, tearing through splintered wood, heavy rocks, and twisted debris, anything that stood between it and the life trapped beneath. Each movement was fueled by sheer desperation. This wasn't about instinct anymore. This was a mother fighting for her child. Battle against time. The tiny cub's whimpers grew weaker. Trapped beneath the crushing weight of fallen logs and shattered beams, it barely had the strength to cry out. Its breathing was shallow, its tiny paws twitching as it struggled to free itself. The mother bear knew she was running out of time. She let out a deep, guttural sound of anguish, a noise so raw, so filled with primal urgency, that it sent shivers down the spines of everyone watching. She clawed frantically at the rubble, ignoring the sharp splinters and jagged edges slicing into her paws. Blood smeared the wood, but she didn't stop. The townspeople watched, their fear melting into something else entirely. Shock, awe, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Some wanted to step in to help. A few brave souls even took hesitant steps forward. But then they stopped, because this was beyond them now. This was her fight, and she was going to finish it. A mother's desperation. The bear heaved against a massive wooden beam, her muscles rippling with every ounce of strength she could summon. It refused to budge. She roared in frustration, the sound echoing through the streets like a thunderclap. And then, she did something no one expected. She rose up on her hind legs, towering over everything. For a split second, she seemed to hesitate then, with a terrifying display of raw power, she slammed her full weight down on the beam. A sickening crack split the air. The wood snapped in half. A gasp rippled through the crowd as the last of the debris shifted, revealing the fragile, trembling body of her cub. It wasn't moving. The mother bear let out a sound that no one present would ever forget. It was more than a growl, more than a cry. It was a mother's scream. The moment of truth. She nudged the tiny body with her massive nose, urging it to wake up. For a second the world stood still. The cub lay there motionless, too weak, too silent. The mother bear nudged it again, harder this time. Then again. And then. Soft, weak whimper. The cub twitched, gasped for breath, and finally miraculously moved. The tension shattered in an instant. The crowd exhaled in relief. Some had tears in their eyes, unable to process the sheer intensity of what they had just witnessed. The mother bear let out a deep huff of exhaustion and wrapped her massive body protectively around her cub. For the first time since this terrifying ordeal began, she finally stopped moving. The battle was over. She had won. If it had been a human. An alternative twist. But what if it wasn't a cub? What if, instead, it was a child? What if, beneath that debris, trapped and helpless, was a human? One so small and vulnerable that even the most fearsome predator in the forest knew it could not be left behind. The bear would not hesitate. Just as she had with her cub, she would have torn through the wreckage, unafraid, unrelenting. And when the dust finally settled, she would have stood between the child and all threats, wild or human. She would have positioned herself as a guardian, defying every natural instinct of self-preservation, just to ensure that tiny life survived. And then, she would have walked away, not expecting thanks, not seeking approval, just a mother, ensuring that another mother wouldn't lose her child today. The aftermath. A town forever changed. As the mother bear cradled her cub, the townspeople remained rooted in place, staring at the scene before them. Minutes ago, they had feared this bear. Now they understood her. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't a beast to be hunted or feared. She was a mother who had fought, bled, and nearly broken herself to protect the one thing that mattered most. And in that moment, as she lifted her cub and slowly turned back toward the wilderness, no one stopped her. No one raised a gun. No one made a sound. 'Cause some things are bigger than fear. Some things demand respect. And on that day, a town that had once seen bears as nothing more than wild animals learned the truth. They were so much more than that. They always had been. And they always would be. The heart-stopping resolution, tears, goosebumps, and awe. Silence. For the first time since the chaos began, the town stood frozen, not out of fear but out of pure, overwhelming disbelief. The massive bear, exhausted and battered, stood over its rescue. Its breath came in heavy, ragged bursts. Its body trembled from the effort. But it didn't move. Just watched. And for a moment time stood still. The tiny cub, once trapped beneath the crushing weight of rubble, now lay curled beneath its mother's protective shadow. It was alive, weak but breathing. The mother bear nudged the cub once more, gently this time. The cub responded, a small, tired sound, barely a whisper against the wind. A collective exhale rippled through the crowd. Some had been too afraid to move before. Now they were too moved to speak. Town changed forever. Somewhere in the crowd, a voice finally broke the silence. Did we just witness an act of love? No one answered. But they didn't need to. The truth hung thick in the air, undeniable. This wasn't just instinct. It wasn't just survival. It was something deeper. Something that crossed the boundaries of species, of fear, of everything people thought they knew about wild animals. The bear hadn't just saved a life. She had fought for it, bled for it, loved it. No need for thanks. The mother bear finally lifted her head. Her dark eyes swept over the humans, those who had once seen her as a threat. She didn't growl. She didn't roar. She just looked, a long, unreadable gaze. Then, with one final nudge to her cub, she turned. No hesitation, no second thought. And just like that, she disappeared into the wild. No waiting for applause. No expectation of gratitude. Because love doesn't ask for recognition. Simply is. A story that would never die. The people of that small town would never forget what they had seen. Some had come outside that day believing they would witness a monster. Instead, they had witnessed a mother's devotion, a force greater than fear itself. Years would pass. Seasons would change. But whenever the wind howled through the trees or a shadow moved at the edge of the woods, someone would whisper the story again. Do you remember the day the bear came to town? Do you remember how we thought she was dangerous? But she was only trying to save the one she loved? And in that quiet town, nestled against the wild, one truth would remain. Some things are more powerful than instinct. Some things are more powerful than fear. And above all else, some things are simply love. The emotional aftershock, leaving viewers in awe. We often think of wild animals as mindless, as dangerous, as creatures driven only by instinct. But after what we just witnessed, maybe, just maybe, they are capable of more than we realize. This bear didn't just act on survival. She risked everything. She fought through pain, through fear, through exhaustion. Not for food, not for territory, but for love. And that makes us ask, was this just instinct? Or was it something greater? Something that connects us all. Something we call love. Now it's your turn to decide. What do you think? Do animals feel emotions like us? Or do they experience something even deeper, something we can't fully understand? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. And if this story shook you, if it made you feel something you can't quite put into words, hit that subscribe button. Because this is just the beginning. There's more where this came from. Fire Bear Face.